Hello, welcome to this special broadcast. My name is Jim Richardson. Normally I'm your teacher. Today I'm going to be doing a stunt. What I wanted to demonstrate is, first of all, I'm going to infect myself with ransomware. And it's a very dangerous thing, so do not try this at home or at work. I had to use a special computer that I have here, and it destroyed it. So in practice, as I was doing this week, I actually had unexpected results a few times, so I'm hoping that it'll do the same thing. And I'm carrying the malicious payload right here. It's making me nervous just having it around. I know that files don't transmit over the air off of a USB stick, but it's just very scary to be playing with this kind of fire. So what I'm showing you here is my desktop, and I'm connected over to this machine over here on my right. And what I'm going to do is sign into my OneDrive client. And I'm using OneDrive because, number one, we just finished the month of August teaching our users about the benefits of OneDrive and storing your files in the cloud and having them available wherever you are. But also what I wanted to do is show how we can recover from a ransomware attack when we're using OneDrive. So here now it's signing into my OneDrive, it's mapping a drive, and it's bringing me all my files. Now for purposes of demonstration, I'm going to copy these files and place them on the desktop because a lot of end users still put their files on the desktop. And we're trying to convince people to move away from that, move your files into OneDrive. And then I'm also going to make a copy of these and store them in the My Documents folder. And same thing applies here. We don't want people storing things on the local computer. The whole point of this, and part of my recovery process, is not having data on the local computer so that we can recover quickly from a ransomware attack. So here's the OneDrive with my stuff in it, and it's all green, so it's synchronizing. Here's my files on the desktop. So I'm going to show you the difference between what happens to the files on the desktop versus what happens to the files in OneDrive. So I think we're ready. I've got a 15-minute recovery time, so I want to get this started and you guys can get out and move on to other things. So I'm pulling out the malware here, just showing my friends on the camera that I've got malware on Facebook Live. And if you do want to see a second angle of this, you can go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Finchloom, and watch from the live angle I've got going on Facebook. So I'm going to go ahead and insert this USB stick into my computer. Oh wait, not my computer, the test computer. I don't want to infect my real computer. All right, now I've got the computer stick plugged in, and when I open that file, you'll see a very, very bad file right here. It's a zip file, and I'm going to copy that off the stick, and let's bring it to the downloads area. And then just to be safe with my stick, I'm going to remove that. And let's just work here with this file. So this file is a zip file in my downloads folder. And what I need to do is open the file and extract the contents. And here's the contents right here. And it's a very dangerous file. Now I want to repeat that you should not try this at home. I've prepared this special computer to do this test on. And I had to disable a couple of things. I had to turn off Windows Defender because I'm trying to infect myself. I don't want Defender to catch it. And then I've also turned off Windows Update. And I'll explain after I infect the machine the troubles I had trying to infect myself. So here, let's go ahead and start this now so you guys can see what happens when I run this malware. So I'm double clicking the malware right now, and it's running. And usually what will happen is nothing right at the very beginning. At the very beginning, it seems like nothing happened. But if I look at the task manager here, let's see, let's go to more details and let's open up the performance window. You can see something's going on. The CPU is through the roof. The memory and the disk are starting to write. And if I sort by CPU, I can see there's my file right there running, and it's doing a bunch of stuff. So in just a minute here, you're going to see the results of the malware and the prompt that I call the last-ditch effort to save me from infecting myself. And while I'm waiting for the infections, I wanted to tell you a little bit about why Windows 10 was so hard to infect and why I had to use Windows 8 instead. So you can see here's the Windows 8 menu. Oh, my files are encrypted. What just happened? Wow. And then if I look at the desktop here, oh, my files just got encrypted. And remember, I stored a copy of all my files on the documents area. Those are encrypted too. So for our friends who are watching on Facebook, there you can see the files that are encrypted on my desktop, the files that are encrypted on my OneDrive. And that's a bad thing, obviously. I want to try and recover from that. But at the moment, I'm very nervous and panicked, and I feel like all my data is gone. Of course, all the data, oh, whoa, what's this? Now, this is something called user account control. And I want to point this out that as I run a program on my computer, when user account control is turned on, I'm only allowed to do things with my user level permissions. So I can't do things without my knowing that will cause problems. But this is what I call the last line of defense, because this program is trying to run, this malware program, and if I hit yes, it'll actually run and you'll see what happens. So I'm going to hit yes here. And by the way, most users that do that, they see these messages come up and they just hit yes to ignore them, make them go away without really understanding what they're doing. But what user access control does is it allows the user to say, something's trying to run with admin rights. Do you want to allow that? Yes or no? And you can see what happens when I allow it. I get the malware infection screen. And it's really scary. It's in all red, and it's got Russian, what looks to be Russian letters at the top. And then it's also got English down here. And it's telling me to read this file, and it's got the ransom note. All the files were encrypted. If you want to get your files back, you need to send money, and we'll send you the decryption key. So I say, let's not do that. We've already got protections in place so we can recover from the ransomware attack. But first thing we want to do is make sure that we reset this computer, because this computer is no longer any good to be used. So I'm going to go over here and restart this computer into a special recovery mode. Now, I'm going to have to move the camera around a little bit so you can see this. And then you'll be able to see how I reset the PC. So first, I go to troubleshoot and then reset. And then this thing's going to reboot into a recovery mode. And as it gets into the recovery mode, I'll be able to configure it further to recover the computer. And once I get the computer recovered, then I'll recover my files. And this restore process takes about 10 minutes. So while we're waiting for the restore to finish, let me show you some of the back-end components that really made this work. So first of all, I'm going to switch over here to my screen that shows my OneDrive. And because I was synchronizing my OneDrive on that computer, it synchronized the encrypted files. So now my OneDrive has all of these encrypted files on them and I can't read them, which is a bad thing. I don't want encrypted files on my OneDrive either. So I also remember that OneDrive has version control. So with version control, I should be able to go in and revert to an old version of my file. But it seems like this newer version of ransomware also impacted the version control. Either that or I just don't have enough of a history because I just added the sample data. But either way, if I try to restore a previous version in my test, it also restores as an encrypted file. So I know that version control in this instance won't help me. And since all of my files are now infected, I just need to delete them out of my OneDrive. Now, as I'm recovering my computer, when it reboots, here, let me show you again what it looks like. It starts going into a reset mode and it says resetting your PC. So you can kind of see that over there on the side. And that's going to take another 7 or 8 minutes. So while we're doing that, let's focus on recovering our files back to our OneDrive. Now, because I couldn't do version control within OneDrive, I have to rely on my safety net. And for us, we at Finchloom have a cloud-based backup tool that's provided to us by our partners at Skykick. And with this cloud-based backup tool, I can go into the OneDrive that was being backed up for this account. And I just happen to call the account Finchloom STUNT. And as I'm looking at the backup that was taken of this OneDrive, I see all of my old files living happily prior to the infection. And so now what I can do is I can single click on my entire OneDrive and click Restore. And what that'll do is it'll start restoring those files back to my OneDrive. And when they're done, maybe they'll show up here. But while we're waiting for that, I also wanted to explain that there's a concept here called the beauty of disposable desktops. Sorry, I had a slip there. Now, the beauty of disposable desktops is just that. If you get infected, if you lose your computer, it doesn't matter. You can restore that computer back to factory and pick up where you left off. So that's what I'm doing now. I reset my PC, and then I reinstall my apps, and then I resynchronize my data back from the cloud after restoring it from the backup. So that's the beauty of disposable desktops and what I encourage all of our clients to try and move to, that there's no data stored on the desktops. Now, another reason why it was so hard for me to recover is because of the security that we were using as a business. At Finchloom, we utilize advanced threat protection for email. And what that does, it's a special add-on to your anti-spam service that looks for attachments and URLs in emails. And those now are the most common ways that a user would get infected. So that file that I had on my USB stick, it might have just been emailed to me. And if I didn't have the proper protections in place, that file might get through to my computer. So we use the advanced threat protection. It's part of Exchange Online. And that will take any email that has an attachment and take the attachment and detonate it off in a sandbox environment. So it reminds me of the old days when people were discovering new food to eat, and the two Cro-Magnon men would walk up to a bush and they would have berries on it. But one Cro-Magnon man said to another, "You try it first." So he goes and tries the berry, and then they see what happens, and if it's safe, then the other person will go try the berry. Same thing with your attachments. Microsoft will detonate them and see what they do, and if they're dangerous, they won't send it to you. If it's not dangerous, then they'll send it to you. The other thing are the URLs that often come into your emails, and if you click on those, you might be taken to a malicious website that has malware. So I don't want to do that either. So with this advanced threat protection, we can convert those URLs to safe links. So your user will click on a safe link, Microsoft scans the destination, and if it's safe, it lets the user through. So I'm going to refresh my OneDrive here. I just want to see if my files got, ooh, yes, they're there. I recovered my files that were just encrypted a few minutes ago. Now I'm just waiting for the PC to finish rebooting, and then I'll install my OneDrive client, and I'll show you how to recover from that all within 15 minutes. But while we're waiting for that, I also wanted to explain another difficulty that I had in infecting myself. As I was practicing and recovering this computer, I had to install the OneDrive Sync client. And here, let me switch back to the screen view so you can see that these files are back in my OneDrive. And as I was installing the OneDrive Sync client and signing in, I got a message that says, this computer is not enrolled in mobile device management, so it doesn't meet the requirements of Finchloom for you to connect to it and download data. Well, what that was our mobile device management system working with Azure AD to use a feature called conditional access. And what conditional access means is that you cannot access company data unless certain conditions are met. And the very simple conditions would be your device has to be enrolled in mobile device management, or it has to be joined to your company's domain. And so because of that, I couldn't install the OneDrive Sync client and recover. So I had to again turn off a certain protection in order to allow myself to do this test and infect myself. And then the last thing, I tried to do this test on Windows 10, and that was a nightmare. Windows 10 is actually built to be very secure by default. And so I had Windows Defender enabled and activated, and I had automatic updates enabled and working. And so my computer on Windows 10, I could not infect myself. Even if I turned off some of those protections like I did on Windows 8, it just became too difficult. So that's another message out there to the businesses and even to home users that use Windows 10, is always keep your automatic updates running so that the vulnerabilities are patched, and then also make sure that your Windows Defender is turned on. At a base level, Windows Defender will protect your Windows 10 computer from malware. It does a pretty good job. And of course, there are third-party antivirus, anti-malware that you can set up and use, but I find Defender to be quite good enough. So here, let's show you. I'm getting back into my computer. I'm doing the login setup stuff. And that's going to start rebuilding my desktop. So here I'm getting back into my desktop. It's going to be a clean, factory restored computer with no ransomware. So I've recovered my computer. It's a disposable desktop. And now all I have to do is reinstall my OneDrive Sync client, and we'll be back in business. So while we're waiting for this, I just want to say one last thing, that when we use disposable desktops and we use Windows 10 with all the proper security, we can do a whole lot more to prevent the ransomware, especially if you're adding on additional components like mobile device management for conditional access, which means you're only allowing safe, secured devices to access your data, and you use add-ons like advanced threat protection, which protects your emails coming in and scans those attachments and URLs. Finally, you might recall that I talked about the last line of defense, and when I was showing you the infected computer, there was the UAC prompt that came up, and it said, "Are you sure you want to run this?" And that was the last thing I saw before the Russian words came up on my screen. And remember that if you keep UAC enabled, it will help protect your users as long as they know what it means. They have to be able to understand that when that prompt comes up, that's the computer trying to run something with administrator privileges. And if they just want to make that go away, they should hit no, not yes. Because you saw what happened when I hit yes. Some administrators I've bumped into, and they've actually disabled UAC. In my opinion, that's a bad move. It might make it easier for the end user to not deal with pop-up messages, but it reduces the security and footprint of the Windows computer. So that's my final piece of advice to you administrators, is keep the UAC enabled in your environment. All right, so here we go. We're back on this computer, and because I reset the computer, I don't have the remote desktop screen. So I'm going to have to hold the camera here for a second and just show you this way. And I'm going to connect back to my Wi-Fi real quick. And we're almost done. This is not a very long special webinar. I wanted to prove that I could recover from this in 15 minutes. And here, as soon as I get on this Wi-Fi, I'm going to re-download my OneDrive client. Oops. And sorry, this is the slow part of the presentation. So let's download this here. Oh yeah, I see somebody asked about Defender for Enterprise, Advanced Threat Protection on Windows Defender, which actually gives administrators the ability to do forensics on the PC after it's been infected. So rather than rebooting it, resetting it right away, you could turn off that computer, remove it from the network, and then take it back into the lab and analyze it with forensics to see where the infection came from. Plus, you get some zero-day protection. So if there's no known If there's no known, the signatures, if the signatures aren't present for your malware, then your malware tool might not detect it. So what 0-day does, it's kind of like the sandbox that Microsoft uses. It looks at behaviors of the malware and tries to look for not just pattern matching, but behavior, and try to block those before a pattern's even developed to block it. So there are some advantages to using the Enterprise Edition of Windows 10. Also, while OneDrive is downloading, this is what's causing the big delay here. I could tell you that there's also some advanced enterprise features in Windows 10, like Device Guard, that protects the BIOS from things like rootkits and other things like keyboard loggers. There's also the Windows Hello protection that allows you to have biometric with your thumbprint or with your eyeball, or facial detection if the hardware supports it. So it hardens the ability to get into the computer as well. And then the other thing that you'll get is, of course, BitLocker, which does real encryption of the hard drive. So if your laptop is ever stolen or lost, then whoever picks up that computer can't just plug into the hard drive and steal the data. So I'm just waiting for this OneDrive client to finish. Another thing too, after you've reset your PC, after you install all of your apps, you can reinstall the Office app and whatnot from the portal, and then resynchronize your files and be right where you left off. So here now, remember, this is user account control. It's saying, are you sure you want to allow this program to make changes? And I can see that the program is OneDrive. So of course, yes, go ahead and make changes to my computer. I allow that because I initiated that. And as soon as this OneDrive is finished installing, I'll sign in and we'll finish this presentation. So let's show our friends here on the web that that's the OneDrive client reinstalling. And I think this might be a good time to remind those of us who are on Facebook that OneDrive does have a consumer product as well. And it's used by Outlook.com or Hotmail. So if you have an account with Microsoft Network, or the Live account they used to call it, then you can utilize OneDrive for free in your personal life. The only difference is one of the things that I used in my presentation was the Skykick backup that's part of Finchloom's offering. And we could attach the backup to any business plan that we sell, but not for consumers. So you may have to find a third-party tool that does this additional layer of safety net. I guess while I'm here waiting for OneDrive to finish installing, I'll also say that this backup tool also backs up our email and our SharePoint sites. So if I go into my email, for example, I can see different emails and I can restore those individually, or I can restore entire folders. So I'm going to get back over here to my OneDrive for Business because it looks like it's ready to go. So I'm going to log in here with my account STUNT. And right here is where it makes a connection to Azure AD to authenticate me. And if we had multi-factor authentication, if we had conditional access, this is where it would have checked. And this is where I was getting denied before because this computer is not enrolled or domain joined. But now, since I've removed that for the STUNT account, I do get my OneDrive coming back up, and it brings up my folder here. And let me bring our Facebook friends over so they can see it. And voila, all of my files are being restored as we watch to my OneDrive, and they're syncing back down to my PC, and I'm back in business now. So all I would need to do at this point is install the Office client, and then I'm back in business with my Office programs, or reinstall my Adobe Reader, and that'll put me back in business with the PDF files, and I'm good to go. One last point is notice that on the desktop, those files I once had on the desktop are gone. I cannot recover those because those weren't part of the cloud-based backup. So again, I recovered within 15 minutes using a combination of OneDrive for Business and our Finchloom backup tool that backs up from the cloud, and everything is back to normal. Of course, if you have a lot of files in your OneDrive, or you're restoring multiple people, that may take a little bit longer than 15 minutes. And for purposes of this stunt, I went ahead and just showed you how it would work with a smaller subset of data. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off and let you guys get back to what you were doing. I hope you have a pleasant day, and I hope that this was informational for you as well as exciting, where I infected myself live on the internet with ransomware, and I recovered within 15 minutes. Thanks again. I'm Jim Richardson for Finchloom. Have a nice day. Bye, everyone.